恭敬大德圣听，为此法会济切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死离苦得乐，殊真无生。Well, the Sangha with great virtue, auto compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attempt bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one. 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 Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Rainbow Master, and all good knowing advisors, Amitabha, welcome back. This is Sutra lecture number 128. Okay, let me get the slide. All right, how do I sound now? Still distant?
Very much better.
Much better?
Very much better. Yes, yes.
Okay, nothing has changed besides just me ending Zoom and starting again. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
It's improving, that's all. That's why
Okay.
it's better.
Okay, all right. Good, I'm glad. Okay, where are we now? We are at Mindfulness of the Sangha, and as usual, before I start, if anyone has any questions, you can unmute your microphone and ask at any time, or you can type into the chat box. We have some questions which from last week, 3 steps 1 bow question, which I haven't answered yet. And then there's another question about the that's related to the 8 precepts. Okay, and if I have missed out any questions which I have not answered yet, could you please remind me? Okay, all right. Ron, your microphone. Okay, all right. No,
Oh, sure.
ignore me. Yes.
Very quick one, and you can answer it anytime you want. Last week you talked about setting up a plaque for, other people. I mean, not related to you, like people that you don't get along with. And I forgot the context of what was the reason you talked about this subject. If you could just say something later on when you're answering questions, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Ron, could you just type in the chat box, please? So I won't forget. Okay. All right. So we are looking at mindfulness of the Sangha, continuing with our topic on how to develop loving kindness. So we've done mindfulness of the Buddha, or recollection of the Buddha, which is where Pure Land practice. If you were to ask where does Pure Land practice come from, it's from mindfulness of the Buddha. You could say it's derived from there. And we've gone through mindfulness of the Buddha. Now we are doing mindfulness of the Sangha. And it says that when a man or when a practitioner is truly wise, his constant task will surely be this recollection of the Sangha, blessed with such mighty potency. Okay, so what does that mean? All right. We are looking at the Sangha through the perspective of the Sangha as being worthy of offerings. Okay, you will see this in Buddhism a lot. One who is worthy of offerings usually refers to an arhat. When you practice and then you end birth and death and you become an arhat, then you become one worthy of offerings. If I'm not mistaken, that might be one of the official names of the arhat. I don't remember. I'm not sure, I'm 50% sure, but something like that. Okay, so basically it says the Sangha is worthy of offerings thanks to the perfection of the qualities represented by these 5 pure Sanghas. The 5 pure Sanghas we went through when we talked about the Buddha. And so here it is, let me see. Okay, so we talked about that last week, so I won't go over that again, because that's one area which I don't really know enough to feel comfortable explaining a lot about it. Yeah, so because there's not many references to it, so we just carry on. Okay, the Sangha has pure 5 skandhas, whereas we as ordinary people, our skandhas are referred to as our body. What body? Melinda gave it to us last week. It is form, feeling. Okay, form is a body. Okay, then feeling, connection, formation, and consciousness. So the body and the mind. That's the 5 skandhas. So continue on with the text. It's just as a rich, noble, and powerful person is extolled by the people, so the Sangha who hold the power of discipline, concentration, wisdom, deliverance, knowledge, and vision of deliverance, I say, who says this is the Buddha saying this, is worthy of offerings, worthy of hospitality, and worthy of veneration. These 3 things, these 3 terms, we are going to look at one by one. Why? Because when you meet a monastic, you should know what to do. Who asked? Randy, quite some time ago, asked about how we should, one should treat monastics. So in these 3, worthy of offerings, worthy of hospitality, and worthy of veneration. So let's go through the first one. Worthy of offerings. What is offerings? It says a gift. In Sanskrit, it's called ahuna. A gift is called ahuna. Is what is to be brought even from far away and donated to the virtuous. It is a term for the 4 requisites. It is given out of faith in the world to become. Okay, what are the 4 requisites here? Monastics only need 4 things to survive, okay, which are known as the 4 requisites. They need shelter from the elements. They need clothes. They need food, and they need medicine. These 4 things. If you are, say, interested in something like the environment, or you want to talk about sustainability, or you want to look at mankind's effect on the planet, and you want to look at, is there, okay, what we do right now as humans living on the earth, we consume a lot. And if you want to look at the opposite end of what is the barest requirement that a person needs to survive, it's the 4 requisites, okay? Shelter, clothes, food, and medicine. These 4 things. It says it is given out of faith in the world to come, which means that when you give, you are looking towards the future. The Sangha is fit to receive that gift because it makes it bear great fruit. Thus, it is fit for gifts. I have 2 very interesting stories at the end for today. Actually 3, but it's of 2 same people. It says, or alternatively, all kinds of property, even when the bringer comes from far away, can be given here. Okay, what is the word ahuna or gift mean? Ahuna is used to mean gift, but it literally means sacrifice. In other words, you don't give the things that you don't want, okay? You only give something that you that has value to you. Okay, so when you make an offering, if you want to know if your offering is sincere, at the very least, you're not giving something that you don't want. When I was at CTTB, in my first year as a layperson, first 2 years as a layperson in CTTB, I was working in the AO. They call it the AO, the administrative office. And when you work at a front counter, a lot of people come, and sometimes they donate things to CTTB. And when I say donate, I'm using my fingers in air quotes, because some of the donation, you can tell it is things that they don't want anymore, but at the same time, they don't want to throw it away because it can still be used. But it's something that they clearly don't want. For example, sometimes we get hi-fi equipment, but the hi-fi equipment is from the 60s or the 70s. Technically, it can still be used, but it's not something that anyone would ever use, and so it's like they're using CTTB as a recycling center, something like that, or at least that was how I felt. That was, what they were doing. Maybe they were very sincere. I don't know, but it seems like we receive a lot of I won't call it junk, but not very useful things. Okay, moving on. Worthy of hospitality. What is that? Worthy of hospitality is what a donation to visitors is called. Okay, when you have someone as a visitor. Prepared with all honors for the sake of dear and beloved relatives and friends who have come from all quarters. So that gives you an idea about the mindset, the heart behind how you treat people. But even more than to such objects of hospitality, it is fitting that it should be given also, and given first, to the Sangha. For there is no object of hospitality so fit to receive hospitality as the Sangha, since it is encountered after an interval between Buddhas and possesses wholly enduring and lovable qualities. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that, for example, like now, we are not in the time of the Buddha. So we have no opportunity to make an offering directly to the Buddha. So what's the next best thing? The Sangha. In certain sutras, the Buddha says that if you give to the Sangha, it is the same as if you give to the Buddha. So according to the Buddha, the merit and the blessings from giving to the Sangha, it is no different from giving to the Buddha. The only difference is in your heart and in your mind, the discrimination that you hold. The smaller the heart, the smaller your mind, the smaller the blessings you will get back. So it's very fair. It all depends on you play a huge role as well. Okay, so it says here the Sangha is supposed to possess holy, enduring, and lovable qualities. Okay, all right. So that's why in the Bodhisattva precepts they say the same thing. Okay, in the Bodhisattva precepts it says that you, for a sincere devotee, before you eat something, you always offer it to the Buddha or the Sangha first. And the offering is not how you say. It doesn't have to be an offering. Let's say like before you eat, all right, there's food. The offering can be symbolic as well, because if you offer your food, you may not have anything to eat. Although there are stories where people who offer the only thing they have to eat, they have nothing else to eat, they only have that for their lunch, and instead they offer it. But because of their sincerity, they get a great blessing in return. So it's a good thing. But at times when we offer, say on the altar, is symbolic. Okay, what is worthy of veneration? This is from the Visuddhimagga. It is worthy of being accorded by the whole world the reverential salutation consisting in placing both hands with the palms together. Thus it is fit for reverential salutation. This is the Anjali, or the, what is it? There's a term for it in Chinese, where you put your palms together. In our tradition, you make a half bow, or when you see a monastic, it is more common to do 3 bows, but you have to ask first. If you don't ask and you just bow, it is you are forcing people to accept your bow. So the common etiquette is when you see a monastic and it's convenient, and if you want to make 3 bows, you ask for permission to bow, and then you bow. And if the monastic says "ipai," 1 bow or 1 bow, then you bow 1 bow. And at the end of either 1 bow or 3 bows, you say "Amitofo." That's what we do. Okay. So moving on, the supreme field of merit says the Sangha is the best field of merit for the world. There are 2 types of patrons, or Dhanapati. Dhanapati means people who donate. Okay, the rich, the poor, and the rich. So the poor donor, or Dhanapati, is rewarded for his homage, his signs of respect, and his eagerness towards the Sangha. Okay, and then the rich donor is rewarded not only for his homage, his signs of respect, and his eagerness towards the Sangha, but also for his gifts in kind. So in other words, you give what you are able to. So the bare minimum for your own interest, not because you have to, and not because monks and nuns demand this kind of treatment. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with generating merit, virtue, and blessings for yourself. So the bare minimum, if you want to do it properly, you want to be respectful, and there's a sort of eagerness towards the Dharma, and if you can afford it, then you provide more things. But if you cannot, then it doesn't matter. Okay, and that's why stealing and giving to the Sangha is not a good thing, because you're not giving what you are able to give. You are you are stealing so that you can give, which is not good. So you don't have to feel like you are forced to give something just because other people can. So at the same time, appropriating anything that is due to other people and taking it and giving it to the temple is also considered stealing. It's a very bad thing to do. Okay, because there have been instances where people, whether they're in a monastery, whether they are monks or nuns, where people in power make a decision on other people's behalf, that instead of that the money should go to them, the money should go to the monastery instead, because they think that it is a good thing. But if you are denied the opportunity, okay, first of all, the money doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the other person. So you have no right to dictate how the money should be used. Even if someone were to inform you, it is not your right. Okay, you shouldn't get in between offerings. That's number one. Number two, you deny the other person the opportunity for them to make the offerings themselves if they want to. You know, so it is not a case of the end justifies the means. No, I'm saying this because it actually happens. You know, so we should not appropriate offerings to the temple that are in fact due to other people. Okay. All right. What else about the supreme field of merit? It says work plowed, planted at the proper time, watered and freely irrigated, a good field necessarily gives an abundant crop. It is the same for this field of merit, the Sangha. The the plow of wisdom is used to plow the roots of the fetters. What are the fetters? We went through the 10 fetters last week when we talked about the arhats. Okay, I can't recall them from memory, so don't ask me. But if you want to, go check YouTube lecture 127 and you get the list of the 10 fetters. The 4 immeasurables are taken to break it up and soften it. The Dhanapati or the donor sows the seeds of faith and of generosity. He waters it with the water of the recollection of generosity, respect, and a pure mind. See how elegant this metaphor is used. Because the sash that monastics wear is called a field of merit, and it's made up of little square pieces of cloth that are stitched together to represent a paddy field. So it's literally a field. That's what it represents. So we use the plow of wisdom. A plow digs up the roots, so it digs up the roots of the fetters, the 4 immeasurables. What are the 4 immeasurables? Anyone? 4 immeasurables are what we're studying right now. The first of which is loving kindness. All right. 4 immeasurables are loving kindness, compassion. Okay, so look, what is loving kindness? Loving kindness is the wish that you are happy and the wish that other people are happy as well. So you start with yourself, because if you're miserable, you cannot wish for others to be happy. It doesn't work. So you develop loving kindness for yourself, and you learn, which is what we are learning right now. We are learning about all the good things we can think about ourselves, right? Second, you develop loving kindness for people. And when you have loving kindness for people and they suffer because of your loving kindness for them, you get compassion. All right. So compassion is not just develop compassion. Compassion comes from loving kindness for the people that you care about. So you have loving kindness, then you have compassion. Thanks, Suiling. Yeah. Suiling just typed out the 4 immeasurables. Then you have sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is also known as insurance against, it's called happiness insurance, or I call it happiness insurance. Why? If you see people who are happy, when good things happen to people, you feel happy too. So when they're happy, you're happy. When they're not happy, you have loving kindness for yourself, you're also happy. And then you give rise to compassion. So that's loving sympathetic joy, which is happiness insurance. So it combats things like jealousy, envy. No one can make you jealous, because when good things happen to them, you get happy. Sometimes you get more happy than they are. That's very good sympathetic joy. And finally, you have equanimity, which is the ability to maintain evenness of mind, so that you're not overcome by other people's grief or suffering, and you can maintain your mindfulness. All right. Okay. So those are the four immeasurables that break up our fetters and soften it. The fetters are important because that's what prevents us from ending birth and death. Okay. Then, as a donor, okay, whether you are poor or rich donor, you sow the seeds of faith and generosity. So generosity doesn't mean it's things that you can purchase with money. It can also mean your time and your effort. And then you water it with the water of the recollection of generosity, respect, and a pure mind. And that's exactly what we are learning about today. We are, we are making water, okay? By learning about the different recollections, by recollecting our virtues, by recollecting all the good things that, all the good virtues that we have, we use that. It's called recollection. Okay, so right now we are recollecting the Sangha. This is the water that we can use to irrigate our field. Okay, and then what will happen? Then in the present lifetime or in the next lifetime, he obtains an immensely worldly happiness and obtains the fruits of the three vehicles. Thus, at the time of the Buddha Vipassin, the Bhikshu Bakula offered a fruit, a cherry plum, to the Sangha for 91 kalpas. Okay, so when this happened, he wasn't a bhikshu yet. This is referring to our time, during Shakyamuni Buddha's time, when there was a monk named Bakula. And this is his origin story, how it all began for him. So he says that after he offered a single cherry plum, just one cherry plum, to a member of the Sangha, to a monk, for 91 kalpas, he enjoyed happiness among gods and men. And what was he famous for? He was famous for never being sick. He never fell sick, all because he offered a single cherry plum. So from here, you can tell that it's not really the cherry plum, like what would have happened if he had offered a durian fruit or, like a bigger fruit or something. Giving does not depend on the, on the size of the gift. It does have influence, but in reality, it's the heart that makes the difference. Your intention and your heart, your sincerity. That's why in the Untitled Sutra, Buddha says, even if you make a gift as small as a strand of hair or a grain of rice, meaning something almost negligible, just give a grain of rice to a bird, for example. But if your heart is sincere and you are able to transfer the merit to the entire Dharma realm, then your blessings will be great. Okay, so transfer merit to the entire Dharma realm. That's again another thing that's not magic. Okay, it means that you, it's not just a wishful thinking, or I transfer this to all beings. Making a vow or making a transference like that, for it to generate the kind of blessings that is talked about, for example, in the Untitled Sutra, has to have the effect that it can transform you. So if you say that, oh, with this I want to transfer it to all living beings, it has to show in the next living being that you encounter, how you treat that living being, how you help that living being to the extent that you can, and the next living being they encounter, and the next living being. So if your transference is just to your family, then it has to show in the way you treat your family. So if your transference, like the Buddha says, if you can transfer to the entire Dharma realm, then it means that every single living being that you meet, every single human, every single animal, becomes a beneficiary of your kindness, of your compassion, So can you pull that off? If you can, that's how you can generate the blessings for 100,000s of lifetimes, as stated in the Untitled Sutra. So it is not magic. Okay. All right. So coming back to the bhikshu Bakula. He gave a single cherry plum. For 91 kalpas, he enjoyed happiness among gods and men. He was never sick. And then today, having met the Buddha Shakyamuni, he went forth from home, he became a monk, destroyed his impurities, and became an arhat. All because of that single incident that started it all. He gave a single cherry fruit. Okay.
Sure.
Yes, Ron.
Can I just ask a question right now regarding the story here about Bakula?
Yes.
So I'm not sure that whether or not Bakula at that time knew about this thing, where he was going to get so much merit or blessings. But now that we have heard it, if we went and did the same thing, and let's say we could find, we gave something to the Sangha, will we get like 41 kalpas of enjoyment or happiness among gods and men?
Well, it depends. It depends.
You know what I mean? I mean, now we have a motivation for doing this.
Yes. So it depends on your intentions. And I'll come to that. Okay, Ron, keep in mind right intention, because I'm going to talk about the 8 precepts later. And when I do that, I'll bring up right intention. Okay. So the story that I have is actually of Bakula. It's a long story. Let me see, 1025. I'll just give the short version first. Okay. So what happened was this, and this partly answers Ron's question. At the time of Vipassana Buddha, he invited the community. He was the owner of a hardware shop. That's exactly how he described his past life. When he became an arhat, he actually told his story. So he says he was the owner of a hardware shop, and he invited the community of monks and the Buddha Vipassana for lunch. So the monks came to his home, and he said, but nobody asked anything of him, except for one monk who asked for a single fruit. It's called a hari taki fruit. I think that's the cherry plum. And so he said, as a result of that, he says for 91 kalpas, he was not reborn in the bad destinies. That means the hell realm, the animal realm, and the realm of hungry ghosts. And he said, he said it was actually a gift of medicine. Oh, so it was not just a cherry plum, but it was like a medicinal fruit. And let me see. And he said that since after his rebirth in the heavens, then when he obtained a human rebirth, he said as long as he was in training, that means he left home, he always obtained offerings. Yeah, that means he never once went hungry. And he said his lifespan as a human was 160 years. That's a long lifespan. So I have more about his story, but before that, I have another person. And this person wasn't a monk at the time of the Buddha Vipassana. So what happened is this. Okay, wait, let me explain first. Who is Buddha Vipassana? Okay, Buddha Vipassana, or in Pali, he is known as Vipassi, is the 22nd of the 28 Buddhas before Shakyamuni Buddha. So before Shakyamuni Buddha came, all right, there were a lineage of 28 Buddhas, which means Shakyamuni Buddha is Buddha number 29, and number 22 of that long line of Buddhas is Buddha Vipassana. Okay, all right. So during the time of Buddha Vipassana, the Shramana Koti Vimsa. Shramana in this context, sometimes it means monk, but in this context it means mendicant, but he wasn't a follower of the Buddha. So he built a house. He covered the floor with rugs and offered it to the Sangha. And as a result, for 91 kalpas, he enjoyed happiness among the gods and among men. It is said, his feet did not touch the ground. Okay, his feet did not tread on the ground. When he was born, on the soles of his feet, he had hair 2 inches long, soft and fine. Some other people say it was 4 inches, some say it's 2 inches. Seeing this, when sorry, I'm not explaining this well. Okay, after he gave the gift to the Buddha Vipassin, Kotivimsa for 91 kalpas was born in the heavens, and in his last rebirth, he was born with hair on his feet. Okay, so now we are coming to his rebirth during Shakyamuni Buddha's time. He was born on hair in his feet, and when he was born, his father was very happy because he has hair in his feet, and apparently his father was very rich, so upon his birth, he already inherited a fortune. When Kotivimsa, in this present life, became an adult, he saw Shakyamuni Buddha, he heard the Dharma, and he cultivated, he practiced, and then he became an Arhat. And of all the Buddha's disciples, he was known as foremost in exertion. That means he was never ever lazy. That's what it means. Yeah. So let me see. So it says that on the soles of his feet, he had hair which was long, fine, soft to touch, beautiful like cotton down. And the part about not touching the ground. Okay. So you can take it literally, and literally means since his birth till his leaving home, because he became a monk. So you can take it to mean that since he was born and since he left home, his feet literally did not touch the ground. You can, because that's what the sutra says. Okay, you can. But then, for someone who is able to look at it that way, okay, to take it literally, then you also have a lot of stupid questions to ask, like, oh, then how did he go to the toilet? How did he walk around? Is it because he wore shoes, which meant his feet never touched the ground, or what does it mean? Or did someone carry him everywhere he went? Did he have servants so he was rich? Or someone say, how is that even possible? Who has heard of such a thing? Well, that's what happens if you don't have use your common sense or your wisdom and you take the sutras literally. But if you were to use your wisdom, okay, maybe then you might think that, oh, probably it's just trying to say that because he was in a very rich family and he had a very luxurious life, everything was done for him. You can think of it that way, and you wouldn't be wrong. Okay, so you can think, oh, he had servants, so anything he wants was served to him. He didn't have to do his own cooking. He didn't have to do his own laundry. Just like how rich people now, very, very, very rich people, they have personal assistants wherever they want to go. They have people who arrange it for them. You can think of it that way. That's fine as well. Yeah. So why am I talking about him? Okay, he is responsible for why monks are allowed to wear shoes. Okay, so because of his pampered life, when he left home, actually he wanted to leave home. Okay, but he had a very pampered life. So he went to Venerable Mahakachana, who he regarded as his teacher. And he said that, he's been thinking about leaving home and he wants to live the home life. And guess what did Venerable Mahakachana tell him? Mahakachana said, no. He said, it's very hard. He discouraged him. He said, it's very hard, Sona, which was his layperson's name, the lifelong 1 meal a day, sleeping alone, holy life. So it says, please, right there as you are a householder, devote yourself to the message of the Buddhas and to the proper time, which means the Uposatha day, which I'm going to talk about later. It has to do with the 8 precepts. 1 meal a day, sleeping alone, holy life. What does it mean? He says, basically, you can observe the 8 precepts on the various days of the lunar month and still remain a householder because it will be too difficult leaving home. In other words, you won't be able to take it. So when he heard Rabbi Mahakachana say that, he agreed. He said, yeah, it's too hard to leave home. So he forgot about it. But this happened 3 times. Okay. He went asked once, was told not to. He said, okay. He went back a second time after a while, thinking he wanted to become a monk. Again, he was discouraged by Rabbi Mahakachana. And then a third time he went. So on the third time, Rabbi Mahakachana said, okay, I will give you the going forth. So he became a monk. So after leaving home, he practiced, but he did not get any success. So he was he felt restless, and he didn't feel as if he was vigorous enough. So he started to perform walking meditation, and he walked so much, and given that his feet was very tender, okay, remember, he never touched when his feet never touched the ground, remember? Okay. As a result of he doing walking meditation for hours and hours, his feet started to bleed. So he had a false thought. Okay. When his feet started to bleed, he thought that, oh, it was too difficult, and maybe he's just not cut out to become a monk, he thought. Why? Because your body does not allow you to do what you want. Okay, there are a lot of people who think that way. When the body gives you a signal to say that, oh, maybe living home is not right for you, whether it's sickness, in his case, his feet were too tender to undertake walking meditation, or something else. And he began to have second thoughts. So the Buddha knew what was going on. So the Buddha went to him, and as a result of the Buddha speaking to him, we have another famous sutra called the Vinu Pamowada Sutra. Okay, Vinu means violin, because not violin, a string instrument. Why? Because before he left home, he used to play a string instrument, kind of like a guitar. Yeah. So what is this famous sutra all about? Well, it has the metaphor of tuning the strings on, we just, for convenience sake, we just call it a guitar, okay, instead of vinu, call it a guitar. So the Buddha went to him and told him, said, oh, you want to go back to lay life? Okay, well, says when you were playing your guitar, the string instrument, says if you adjusted the strings too tight, what would happen? And then his reply was, well, if you play, then if the strings were too taut, then you would break the strings. The Buddha said, oh, okay. Says, what happens if you were to loosen it too much? And he told the Buddha, then the strings won't make a sound, or the sound that they make will be out of tune, and then you won't get the tune that you want. So from there, he understood, oh, the Buddha is trying to teach me how to do right exertion, how to find the right, how much effort to apply according to his level. Yeah. And when he understood that, then he went to meditate again, and then he became an arhat. And also, because of in that incident where the Buddha went to talk to him, the Buddha allowed him to wear boots. Yeah, and because of that, to be fair, the Buddha allowed all monks to wear shoes after that. Yeah, so he didn't have to walk barefoot anymore. Okay, so that's the story of the Shramana Kotivimsa during the time of the Buddha Vipassin. When he became a monk, his name was Kotikana, Venerable Kotikana, yeah, or Venerable Sona, Venerable Sona Kotikana. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Oh, okay, it's time. We are running out of time. The next story that I have of the previous monk, Venerable Bakula, I'll keep it for next week instead. For now, let me end this slideshow and talk about the 8 8 precepts. Let me find the slide. Where is it? Okay, as I'm looking for that, let's talk about 3 steps, 1 bow. And the question of 3 steps, 1 bow was, what is the significance or what is the meaning of doing 3 steps, 1 bow? For example, as what we recently did at Route in Malaysia. And why does Theravada Buddhism don't do that? There are different kinds of bowing. If you look at the way Theravada people bow is different from Mahayana Buddhists. And when it comes to a full prostration, even in the Mahayana bowing, the Tibetans do it differently. The Tibetans do it by lying flat. The whole body is flat, face down on the ground. Whereas Mahayana, we only have the 5 points touching the elbows, the knees, and the head, the forehead touching. So it's different. Let me see, what do I know about 3 steps, 1 bow? 3 steps, 1 bow as a meditational practice is excellent because it combines the movement of the body and the mind. So over time, if you do it for long periods of time, because you're engaging the body in a repetitive movement as opposed to meditation, some people find it hard to sit and meditate. And if you find that really, really difficult to do for long periods of time, you can alternate with bowing meditation. And because bowing meditation involves movement of the body, you can get into very deep levels of concentration that way, provided you do it for a long period of time. Or I guess this depends on the person who's doing it. But I personally find bowing to be a very powerful form. So 3 steps, 1 bow is, I think, a uniquely Chinese practice where you take 3 steps and then you bow once and then you stand up and you take 3 steps again and you bow another time. Usually done as a pilgrimage. I know of Elder Master Shi Empty Cloud, who undertook 3 steps, 1 bow in order to repay the kindness of his mother. And Shufu did not do 3 steps, 1 bow, to my knowledge, but Shufu, in relation to repaying the kindness of his mother, Shufu sat by his mother's grave for 3 years in order to purify the karma. Let me see what's the time. I won't explain into the technicalities of that, but it basically has to do with purifying how you see your loved ones and transferring the merit to them, so that in a future life, if you were to meet, instead of regarding your past mother as through emotional affinities, you would regard them with affinities built on the Dharma, if that makes sense to anyone. So that's how you purify your karmic affinities, as to the best of my knowledge. Okay, I'm not saying that my explanation is the only one or is right, but to the best of my knowledge, that is how you purify your karmic affinities, so that after you perform something like that, in your next life, when you meet a formerly loved one or formerly dear one, especially someone who you have a lot of gratitude for, you don't regard them emotionally anymore, but you regard them through the lens of the Dharma. Okay, either as someone to save or as someone you respect, someone you treat with loving kindness, with compassion, things like that. All right. Okay. So 3 steps, 1 bow was also done twice under Shufu. I think the monk's name was Heng. So there were 2 3 steps, 1 bow pilgrimages when Shufu was around. The first one had something to do with Seattle. I have the book, but I don't remember the details. And then the second one was done by Rama Hengshe and Heng Chao, who is now known as, who has went back to lay life. He's a professor He's known as Smarty, and he teaches at DRBU. Rama Hengshwe and him did it for world peace. So that's what they did do it for. For other people, okay, if you are interested in Three Steps One Bow, usually bowing has to do with repentance. So the significance or the meaning behind Three Steps One Bow can be different for the practitioner who does it. But yeah, so the significance depends on the person who's doing it, on your heart, on your intention. It can be different for everyone. So for Elder Master Shin, he did it to repay the kindness of his mother. For Rama Hengshwe, it was for world peace. And I don't remember I can't recall what the first Three Steps One Bow was under Shufu. What was the intention behind it? Yeah, I can find out. Yeah. All right. So Three Steps One Bow is a very difficult practice. Okay, it's very, very hard. It may sound very romantic, like you want to, like a very idealistic form of practice, but it's very, very difficult to sustain and to do it right. So how you put it, the vigor that you put in, the effort that you put in, if you do it right, you are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path the whole time. And so it becomes a very, very powerful method of practice. Because as you're doing it, as how I understood Rama Hengshwe did it for the whole day, yeah, and he observed the silence, he didn't speak. So you are engaging all your senses, you're engaging your body, and he was also carrying the Avatamsaka Sutra on his back, in the back. So all those combined makes for a very sincere approach, to practice. And because you commit yourself, it reveals it reveals your mind, and you cannot run away from what your mind and your past karmic seeds are doing. They just arise. And so it's a very, very powerful way to look into your mind and to see where your afflictions lie. Yeah. So as a practice, there's that. In terms of significance, you can make it, you can give it whatever significance you feel is right for the practitioner. Yeah. But as a practice, it's a very, very tough, ancient practice. Yeah. Okay. All right. Going to the 8 precepts. Mr. Tai, if you have more questions about the Three Steps One Bow, please let me know. Okay. What are the 8 precepts? The 8 precepts are also known as the Pakwan Chai, or the 8 fasting precepts, or the 8 precepts. Sometimes they are referred to as a Uposada, meaning, or in Pali, the Uposatha, meaning to abide in a state of fasting or abstinence, and is observed on the 8th, 14th, 15th, 23rd, 29th, and 30th days of the lunar calendar, especially if you have taken the Bodhisattva precepts. You have taken the lay Bodhisattva precepts, then on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, you have to observe the 8 precepts. For everyone else, you can observe the 8 precepts anytime you want. Usually, if you join Fa Hui in the monastery for 1 week, you can observe. If the 8 precepts are transmitted, you can observe. You can take it for 1 day, 1 night, which is how most people do it, or you can take it for the duration of the session, maybe 7 days. It's not fixed. So what are the 8 precepts? I'm just going to, so it's the 5 precepts, and you add number 6, which is no sleeping on a high or luxurious or large bed. Number 7, not wearing any makeup, perfume, not watching or listening to entertainment, song, or participating in dancing. And number 8, not eating in improper times, which basically just means eating 1 meal a day, although you can have breakfast. Okay. And what is the point of the 8 precepts? I'm going through all this because I have to answer the question. Let's look at the point of the 5 precepts first, the purpose. The 5 precepts is for restraining and prevention of unwholesome actions, and which means unwholesome results or your karma. Okay. What actions? Actions that cause pain and suffering. That's what unwholesome means. And how does it do it? It does it by regulating one's thoughts, actions, and speech. What does that mean? It means that when you take the precepts act as a mirror. It's a tool for you to be mindful of your intentions. So it's not just to stop you from doing certain things or to abstain from certain things, but it's also to make you mindful of why you wanted or you thought of doing it in the first place. Okay. Just observing the precepts is like maybe level number 1. Being mindful of your intention is level number 2. And what's level number 3 is for to understand that you hold it for the benefit of oneself as well as others. What does this mean? Okay. I've talked about this before. You can hold precepts for yourself. Yes, you can. But that's only one side of the story. The other side of the story makes the precepts come alive and makes, anyone from any religion, from any culture, if you know the other side and you explain it to them in that way, they cannot say that you're doing something wrong. In fact, they are kind of forced to agree with you that the precepts are a really, really good thing, especially if they're not Buddhist. Okay, what do I mean by that? When let me how am I going to start with this? Precepts for the benefit of other people works this way. Think about all the people that you care for in life. Okay, I actually did this once. I was struggling to explain the 5 precepts to a group of students. Actually, not a group, a large group of students. 300 students. They come to Berkeley Monastery. They are so large, we have to break them up into 2 groups. They are about 12 or 13 years old, and they come from the Piedmont Middle School. And so they come and ask questions about Buddhism. And one day they asked what makes a Buddhist. So I talked about the 5 precepts, and on the spot I had to explain the 5 precepts. And I always felt the 5 precepts were not satisfactory in terms of explanation, because I have encountered people who go to college, students who go to college, and when they are asked why they are vegetarians and why they don't drink, they don't smoke, they have a hard time explaining the 5 precepts. I myself had a hard time explaining the 5 precepts when I took the 5 precepts, and I was already an adult. So for a long time, I always wondered, is there a better way to observe, to look at the 5 precepts? And then I read that bodhisattvas observe precepts not for themselves, but on behalf of living beings. So when these 300 students came to Berkeley Monastery on the spot, I had to think of something to explain to them, and this is what I thought of. So I asked them, I said, okay, think of all the people that you care about. Your mother, yes. Your father, yes. Some of them said my pets, someone said my teachers. And I said, okay, all these people that you care about as they go about through life, do you want them to always meet people who they always feel safe with, people that will never harm them? They said yes. So every time they go out, do you always want them to meet people who they can trust? So everything they hear, everything they read, they don't have to be suspicious. They don't have to second guess. That means people will not lie to them. They say yes. So as I went through the precepts, then it made a lot of sense to them. And I said, okay, if these people that you care for, if they go out throughout their whole lives, you always want them to be surrounded by people who follow the 5 precepts. So for example, like if they marry, you don't want them to marry someone who gets addicted to intoxicants or to drugs, someone who will cheat on them. That's a precept against sexual misconduct. So I told them, I said, if you always want the people that you care for to be surrounded by people like that, then how about you? how are your actions towards these people? So then they understood. And then when you explain the precepts this way, precepts do not become something you have to do. It doesn't become a chore. It doesn't become, it doesn't make you a good Buddhist. It makes you a decent human being. Okay, it is the least you can do for the people that you care about. When people get married, they should take the 5 precepts. When you become a father or a mother, you should take the 5 precepts. When you have children, you should take the 5 precepts, right? When you are children and you're old enough, you should take the 5 precepts so that you can treat your parents well. So the 5 precepts become like is responsibility the right word? It's something you realize you want to do. The trick is to be able to do it consistently, because then selfishness gets in the way. And when you become a Buddhist and you take the 5 precepts, it means you have to treat everyone the same way. And that's not easy at all. But when you explain it that way, no one, from any religion can find fault. In fact, when I explained this in one of the summer camps in Florida, there was a pastor, a Christian pastor, who said, can I use that to explain the 10 Commandments? And I said, yeah, go ahead, be my guest. Okay, so we got the 5 precepts. What are the 8 precepts? Okay, what's different is that the 8 precepts, not just ethical, but also spiritual. Okay, and they serve as a foundation for higher states of realization of wisdom. How? By creating the conditions conducive for the development of meditation. Okay, so this is the key to the 8 precepts. Is for lay people to experience the benefits of monastic life despite their busy schedule. What are the benefits of monastic life? We have the time to meditate. Okay, that's the key here. All right. And then finally, it enables you to practice right intention. So Ron, this is right intention, the intention of renunciation, the intention of goodwill or loving kindness, and the intention of harmlessness. This is where the precepts come in. You don't do any harm, not just to yourself, but to the people, to everyone that you meet. All right. So when people take the precepts literally, that's when problems begin. Okay, what are taking the precepts literally? They say, oh, Faster, I can't listen the precept against no entertainment. One person actually asked me this question. They said, how can they buy food to feed their family? Because they play music in the supermarkets, and so they stop going to the supermarkets on those days because they play music, and so the family has to go find food themselves. So they avoid shopping centers because of music, so no grocery shopping. Sometimes they've been advised to buy a new bed because no high bed literally means 5 spans of 4 fingers. Sometimes it's translated to as 20 inches. Can't buy anything higher than 20 inches. So I've heard monastics telling people, okay, you have to go buy a new bed, which is very low on the ground. And the people I've spoken to who observe the 5 precepts, they go home, they can't do anything. They say they can't watch TV. They can't read newspapers because that's considered as entertainment by some. So what do? They sleep early. Or worse still, they ban music in the house. And no one can play music in the house because I'm observing the 8 precepts. And they can't eat dinner as well. So poor things, they have to go hungry. So no entertainment, no TV, no scrolling on the handphone, no whatever apps that keeps you occupied on your phone, So they end up just sitting, staring at the wall, or they sleep. And according to them, that's how they observe the 8 precepts. But is that right? I mean, technically, you are observing the 8 precepts. Is that right to observe the 8 precepts that way? You know, wouldn't some beggars, I'm not talking about homeless people, I'm talking about beggars, people who don't have means of um, uh, people who have very little. That's what I mean by beggars. Then are beggars also observing the 8 precepts? A lot of them sleep on the ground. A lot of them don't even have a bed. You know, they sleep on cardboard. They have very little to eat. They might go hungry the whole day. Don't even talk about one meal. Sometimes they don't have any meal. They definitely don't have makeup or adorn themselves. They wear tattered clothes. They don't have perfume. They don't have entertainment. So does that mean that beggars observe the 8 precepts because they seem to have the same lifestyle, or they might be even more ascetic, more vigorous in that sense? Does that mean that they also get the benefits of the 8 precepts? No, what are the benefits of the 8 precepts? Actually, that's the next slide that I have. Okay, what are the 8 benefits? I'm not going to go through this slide, but basically the Buddha says that there's this treasure of 7 jewels. And he says that if all men and women, young and old of that kingdom, a lot of people, they start to move the treasure with carts, elephant, horses, and mules or horses for 7 years, 7 months, 7 days. They move the treasure continuously and they cannot finish moving all of it. The Buddha says, for one who sincerely takes the 3 refuges and the 8 precepts, that person gains merit even superior to that treasure. That's the benefit of the 8 precepts. So does that mean a beggar, you know, also gets, because, you know, you take a beggar that has that kind of lifestyle, does that mean they get the kind of precepts? All right, so the letter of the precepts is one thing. There's another thing called the spirit of the precept. This is just like the what's the mendicant's name? The Sona, who was born with fur or hair on his feet, right? The one who they say his feet did not touch the ground. You can take it literally, you know, there's nothing stopping you taking it literally. But Bodhidharma would say that that's very stupid. Okay, so what are the spirit of the precepts? Okay, the spirit of the precepts means taking a proper understanding of what the precepts are trying to do. So the 8 precepts are trying to create the right conditions for your practice. What right conditions for the practice? Is creating the right conditions so that you can go meditate or recite the Buddha's name or count your breath, or at the very least study the sutras. Although, as you can tell, it is more about meditation than anything else. Okay, because if you don't look at the precepts, understand the precepts that way, and you just hold the form, you become like a vase where you only have air. You don't have any water inside, you don't have any flowers. You become an empty vessel. You're just holding the form. You're not functioning. The form is not functioning. It's just the form. Okay? So the question that we have is about the high and luxurious bed. Okay, what does that mean? Do you need to buy a new bed? How high should your bed be? Take a tape measure and go and measure so that if your bed is low enough and your bed is small enough, you automatically adhere to the precepts. No, that is adhering to the letter of the precepts, but that's not adhering to the spirit of the precepts. Okay, let's look at this letter. What is the letter? Height, 20 inches or less, then you conform. Size, if it's big enough for 2 people or more, you don't conform. Why? Because you're supposed to sleep alone. You're not supposed to have any sexual contact during that time. Okay. What's a luxurious bed? Luxurious means that it's very, very comfortable and you have all kinds of nice things on your bed. And they have a whole list of things like fur things, embroidery blankets, and all these bolsters and all these kind of things. Okay. And then someone will say, oh, what happens if I have this? This is not listed in the sutra. Can I use that? You know? So if you look at it from the perspective of the letter of instead of the spirit, then it becomes very legalistic. It's like a contract. You can find loopholes and you end up only cheating yourself. Okay. But if you look at it from the spirit of the precepts, as what the precepts are trying to do, which is the 8 precepts are for you to create the conditions conducive to a meditative practice. Okay, then you might realize that what the high and luxurious bed means is that for one day and one night, don't have comfort as your main priority, because that's what humans do. When we buy furniture, we buy the most comfortable furniture. When we choose a place to sleep, we always choose the most comfortable place to sleep. When you buy shoes, no one's going to buy a comfortable shoes, unless you are really out for fashion. Then you might buy a good looking but maybe uncomfortable pair. But usually, usually comfort comes first or very close second. So when it comes to meditation, all of you who are listening right now, you will observe in yourself as you sit, at the slightest moment of discomfort, you move. It's normal. We do it the whole day. We are not even aware that we do it. You sit for too long, and if you feel sore in one spot, you shift your weight, or you change the position of your legs. I just changed the position of my legs. Why? Because I felt like it was getting sore. It's normal. You move your head, you shrug your shoulders. It's very, very hard to sit still for a long period of time. So a lot of the things that, if you look at the world, a lot of things are geared towards, the consumer world is geared towards running away from discomfort and going towards comfort. But when you're trying to meditate, that gets in the way of meditation. If you're constantly adjusting yourself, moving your body, you will never ever get into samadhi. Never. Unless you're doing 3 sets on bow, or bowing meditation, then you can. Because why? You just restrict yourself to that. You commit yourself to that one single movement. But if you're trying to meditate and you're fidgeting, opening and closing your eyes, looking here, looking there, you will never get into samadhi. So this is what Master Yongjia in his Song of Awakening has to say. He says the body should always be still. It should not move. He's talking about meditation. But you like to run to the east, to the west, to the south, and to the north, never staying put. He says if you really cultivate samadhi, you will overcome the scattering of running all about. When your mind reveals its wisdom, you will not do stupid things anymore. Then you will have overcome your delusion. So for the 8 precepts, when it comes to the high and luxurious bed, there are many rules regarding what that means. But the spirit of the precepts is that when you sit to meditate, and some people, they sit the whole night, they don't lie down to sleep, so they meditate the whole night. Don't think about how nice it would be to go to bed. Don't think about, if I'll just get up and walk around and then sit down again, although you haven't sat that full hour yet. Don't think like that. Give yourself the opportunity to discover where your limit is. Try to push yourself, because on a daily basis, we don't do that. On a daily basis, regular people, anytime you feel discomfort, you shift, you move, you adjust. So you never find out anything about yourself. That's all you're used to. So on those rare days, if you have taken the Bodhisattva precepts, it will be those 6 days of the lunar month, or any other time you get to experience the 8 precepts, which is very, very rare. All of you can ask yourselves, how often do you do it? Give yourself the opportunity to experience it in full. Okay? Discomfort sets in, concentrate on your Dharma door instead and see what happens. Only when you reach your limit, then okay, then you move. But until then, try not to. So that's the spirit of the high and luxurious bed of the 8 precepts. Other people may explain it differently, but I explain it in a way that makes sense to myself from putting the precepts into practice. Okay, so the next time you observe the 8 precepts and you think about the high and luxurious bed, also, yes, you have to observe the precepts to the letter, but if you understand the spirit of the precepts, then you won't be so caught up in the so-called legalities or the loopholes of the precepts. Okay? It means bear with discomfort and find out your limits when you meditate. Don't go home and sleep early because you have nothing else to do. All right? Okay. So sorry for taking up all the time and more. And I know Peggy was supposed to remind me of saying something, but I did not give her the opportunity. Can you do that next week, please, Peggy? And I'm not sure if I answered Ron's question properly, but if not, please bring it up again next week. All right. Okay, let's transfer merit. That's my... Anyone have any more questions or clarifications? Yes, no? Okay, let's dedicate merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Realm Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, Amitabha everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, 法师。